Greetings, everyone. It has been a little while since the last episode. So, firstly, if you are new to the show, welcome to Birdsong. My name is Kayuda. I must admit, I have not been all that inspired to jump in front of the computer or the technology to edit and record and schedule in podcasts because really, I've had my plate full out here on the land with my fingers and my toes in the soil, gardening, permaculture, taking care of our property, facilitating ceremonies and circles, playing guitar and creating music, which is a large part of how I have come to learn. It's a large part of how I pray. And, all the other life unfoldings that happen when you're in the middle of summer. But I'm here now, and I have a feeling that the podcast wheel will continue to turn a little faster, perhaps as the weather starts to cool down a little bit. And I'm about to head away to do some men's only work, invitation only, with a maestro of mine going deep into cactus wisdom, medicine, and then shortly after I will be heading away for Vision Quest. So 5 days, nights out on the land, removed from food, the company of people, entertainment, shelter, safety, comfort, really just fasting on all things familiar and only drinking water and having maybe a tarp and some warm clothes for shelter. And I'll be doing that with a initiated Sangoma, South African shaman. And really it's all about humbling myself to the Great Spirit, to nature, to keep dreaming the dream, seeding the prayer, and seeing what unfolds in what I'm sure is going to be a very challenging experience, but a very rewarding and profound experience. So maybe I'll do a little update on that when I'm back, maybe a little solo episode. But firstly, this episode, which was recorded quite a number of weeks ago now, is with a dear friend of mine, Jonathan Blake Salazar. And we first met at the late great ascended maestro Don Howard Lawler, Otorongo Blanco, the White Jaguar, the White Wizard, at his sanctuary, Spirit Quest, just outside of Iquitos in the Amazon jungle. And we shared some very powerful experiences together with Ayahuasca, with Huachuma. And this conversation was a great way for Jonathan and I to catch up, and also for Jonathan to share his knowledge and wisdom and his heart and his soul on the show, because he's a great guy on the plant medicine path with a lot to offer the world. He's a healer in training, an Ayahuascero in training, or an aspiring Ayahuascero, if you will. He's also a musician. He's an artist. He's quite accomplished on his path of artistry in the music world. He's won Best Male Singer-Songwriter at the OC Music Awards, Best Singer-Songwriter at the Malibu Music Awards, Best Male Artist at the SoCal Music Live Awards, nominated for a LA Music Award, nominated for the Hollywood Music and Media Awards, a whole bunch of stuff. Fender Guitar endorsement. His Spotify averages 35,000 monthly listens. And his music is awesome. Look, if you listen to podcasts, you know the deal. Please share, subscribe, leave a rating and review, like, and all that good stuff that helps the podcast grow and evolve. It'd be much appreciated. Let's get into it. Thanks for being here. I hope you enjoy this conversation between myself and my dear buddy, Jonathan Blake Salazar. It's like all the teachings that we're going to get from any humans or any plants or anything. It's like, yeah, that is Mother Earth.
Right.
Yeah.
Pretty much encapsulates it all.
Yeah. Well, what do you want to do? Let's do the podcast. Let's start from here. So
let's rock and roll.
Let's do it. Jonathan Blake Salazar, my man. A pleasure to have you on the show. And like we said, about time we organized a digital catch-up, brother.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've spoken face to face. I mean, over so many years, we have sent each other so many little voice memos, and but how long has it been since I actually saw you in the jungle?
What's it been? I think it's probably been about 5 years since we've seen each other in the flesh.
Yeah.
And that certainly brings up some vivid amazing memories of spending some quality time together over at Spirit Quest Sanctuary with the late, great ascended maestro Don Howard Lawler with his epic Huachuma mesadas and mesa, full of those ancient artifacts and the human skulls and the jaguar skulls, the ancestral totems and talismans, and then, of course, those fond memories of Don Robert and Doña Eliana, Don Carlitos, and the profound work that they do over there with
Yeah.
ayahuasca. And, you know, for me, man,
I still remember that. Oh,
yeah,
go ahead. Go ahead. Just
no,
when you said Don Roberto or Rober, didn't he call
yeah.
him Don Rober? I remember that the Flower Bath song that. Yeah, something like that, right? It just like that that song is burned into my being.
Yeah, that's a portal straight back there, man. And
6 a.m. or 5 a.m. or whatever it was after you know, a deep ayahuasca journey, and he's pouring flower water over your head and singing that song and blowing mapacho smoke on you, him and his wife.
Yeah. Fond memories. And, you know, there's a sense of longing for me there when I reminisce about that. I think it's like a longing to be cradled in like the nest of the wild, or like I used the word before, like on the precipice, like being on the precipice of the great mystery with a maestro or a teacher who allows for that deepening into this enmeshment with the spirit world. It's like I'm sure you know, it's like a soul's calling, brother. It's like a heart and soul longing for depth and meaning and richness and, you know, that wild nature to engulf my life.
Yeah, 100%. There's nothing. There's no better teacher for me than the jungle, and being in the jungle with that plant medicine. And over the last few years, I've done dietas, you know, where you're in isolation for 10 days. You got your own little chunk of the jungle in a green hut, and you eat a real minimal diet. There's no toothpaste, no soap. You bathe in the river with leaves, and you know, you drink a lot of ayahuasca, and there are definitely always, every time I've done a dieta, these points where I'm sitting there by the river, and or just surrounded by the jungle, and it feels like Mother Earth is just holding you, you know, and communicating with you in a way, like it's like showing you, look how beautiful this life, this whole life experience is, how intricate and interwoven everything is. Look at all the life just teeming everywhere, all over the jungle floor and all around you. And it really puts life in such a beautiful perspective, you know. I don't know.
Yeah, you've got me reflecting on the very first time that I tuned in with ayahuasca. And part of that journey, it felt like I was a little honeybee wrapped up in this delicate little leaf or this delicate flower. I was just cocooned in this nest of the wild, as I was speaking to before. And it was ayahuasca just coming in and embracing me in this warm, gentle, loving hug and being like, you are a child of the earth and everything is interconnected in these beautiful, mysterious ways. And the Icaros would float in and out, and there'd be those moments of silence where you'd hear all of the communications between all of the jungle critters, and how amazing it was to be able to tune into various species of insects communicating with each other through the jungle. It's like they'd be communicating at different times to each other, to different species. It was just an incredible introduction to the world of ayahuasca and a deeper awareness of that interconnectivity of all of life.
Yeah, and it feels like when you're in those states of consciousness or in those places, it feels, you get that sense that you're part of it. You belong to this earth, and the earth belongs to you, and you're so connected to it in such a deep, beautiful way, and it makes it definitely makes me feel a little more whole, a little less, what's the right word? Fractured or something, like I can feel quite a lot of dissonance in the city, but that's just where I am at my journey. Maybe one day I'll feel it everywhere.
Yeah, when you speak about that, it makes me reflect on this disconnect that a lot of people, and myself as well, can feel towards nature. It's such a cliche point of conversation that we are nature. We forget that we are nature, and we often want to go out into the wild to connect with the natural world, while we are forgetting that we have an entire wilderness inside of us to connect with. It's like we want to deepen that connection to the natural world, and that's all well and great. That's something that we all should do. But at the same time, there's a deepening inside of us, just like that pulse of our heart.
Yes.
That breath coming in and out. It's like that is the most immediate form or sense of nature that we can connect with. And the deeper that we can connect with that internal wilderness, it's going to open up a portal or a vortex for a depth of connection that we've never known out there in the wild.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, just tuning into your breath and the beating of your heart, it can be, well, I mean, that's a whole spiritual practice in itself. I mean, some would say anapana could lead one to enlightenment, and that is just literally just feeling and being aware of your breath, being aware of the sensation of the breath in the tradition that I learned, it's on your upper lip for the most part. I've done those Vipassana meditation courses, and for the first 3 days, you meditate 11 hours a day for 10 days. But for the first 3 days, you're just tuning into your breath. And you get really good at feeling that upper lip after 3 days. Let me tell you, 11 hours a day.
Yeah. And like you say, it's a spiritual practice, and sure, it's a spiritual path, and it's a path that many people take. But for me, it's not the whole thing. I mean, that's only part of it for me, because I had a conversation just recently with John Lockley. I'm just about to release that episode on the podcast. He's a South African shaman, a fully initiated Sangoma in the Xhosa lineage of South Africa. And he's like, and he's not the only one that's said this, and it's certainly not the first time that I've thought about this myself, but he's saying that it's all well and good to try and attain some sort of spiritual enlightenment, but in the same breath, does it really matter? Like, what are you actually doing with it? How are you being in service to the greater web of life through your own spiritual practice? Like, what's the practical application when it comes to bettering the community and being in service to the animals and the plants and the microbes and the fungi and all the rest of it? Like, what are we doing on that larger scale, expanding out from that sense of self?
Right. Yeah, I mean, to that note, I think when you're on that path, when you're starting to tune into what it is that you can do in your life to be of service, and you start to walk that path of service, it starts, I believe, to open you up spiritually in itself, and that itself could be a path towards what one might call liberation or enlightenment. It's the path of service, and I don't think, for me, it feels like, going to a cave and meditating all day or doing 1,000 Vipassana meditation courses, or doing any sort of just nothing but inward journey and work, it doesn't feel like that would ever take me to any sort of enlightenment. It feels like my path is what they would, but for some maybe it is. But it feels like mine is like the path of the heart, a path of like compassion and service and for me, I want to be of service by facilitating ayahuasca ceremonies, and that's what I'm training to do. And yeah, it seems like a double-edged sword, both, I think, and the more inward you go, the more you want to be of service. I feel like the more you get to know yourself and your own inner workings, the more you feel compassion for other people, because you feel more compassion for yourself. And you just want to help, so I don't know. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, look, you mentioned the heart of, the path of the heart. So let's keep diving into the heart of things. And I'd love to have you share a little bit about your relationship to the sacred. And this is something that I generally invite all of my guests to share on. What does the sacred mean to you? How do you honor the sacred in daily life? What is it that helps you remember that connection?
In my daily life, like here in Sunset Beach where I live, going about my normal day, well, I did some ayahuasca ceremonies not that long ago, and ever since then I've been praying a lot more. It seems like I'm starting to understand more, like, deeply what prayer is, what it means. And so I try to say a prayer every day to I pray that I can be as open and honest and transparent in my life as possible today, and so that I can live sort of in alignment with spirit. I learn a lot of the Icaros, or Icaros, whatever you want to call them, which are in themselves prayers. And those are the ayahuasca songs that get handed down from, generation after generation, from teacher to student. And, those songs are oftentimes in Quechua, Spanish, tribal languages, or a mixture of all three. I've been learning those a lot, and I feel like in a way that helps keep me in alignment with the sacred. And I read a lot of spiritual texts and listen to a lot of spiritual books. And I'm not like proud of that or anything. Sometimes I feel like a weirdo or like somebody that's like boring or something, though I do listen to goofy, silly podcasts and stuff sometimes too. But I have this, like, it feels like I'm thirsty, like it feels like I'm so thirsty. And then, I'll read a spiritual text or listen to a spiritual book, and it feels like I'm drinking water or something. Yeah. I know I do feel pretty disconnected oftentimes here. Oftentimes I feel connected to, and writing music helps. I haven't been writing music a whole lot lately, but I try to write a little bit every day. What else do I do to stay connected to spirit? Play a little bit. Didgeridoo helps. Got some didgeridoos behind me. Yeah, one day I'd like to have getting out in nature. Nature is huge for me. My girlfriend will tell you I'm a much easier person to be around if I've gone for a mountain bike ride or been out in nature recently and not cooped up in the house. So nature is huge, huge for me. And I hope one day I get to build a life for myself a lot like yours, where I have I'm living on some land with some space, and perhaps one day hold space for some ceremonies. And yeah, what about you?
You've touched on some of the pillars there that form the pillars of my connection to the sacred as well. And to touch on what John Lockley mentioned in our conversation as well, when I asked him about the sacred and how you typically articulate the sacred to others, he just so simply said, well, you feel it. It's a feeling.
Yes.
We often get wrapped up in these logical, rational, analytic explanations of what the sacred is, but fundamentally it's something that we feel. And how do I feel it in my life? I feel it through some of the ways that you've mentioned as well. We're talking on plant medicine, we're talking about music, prayer, singing, chanting, about slowing down and connecting to breath, of feeling that pulse of the heart, that rhythmic drumbeat inside. And you also touched on the path of the heart, these virtuous qualities such as being kind, being compassionate, stopping and having that moment of pause and presence, to become aware of the interconnectivity of all, and to become aware and to remember the soul and the spirit within all. Family as well. I mean, it's all pretty simple ways for me to connect with the sacred, and it's something that I try and cultivate more and more in daily life. And I would love to be able to say that 24/7 my life is a string of bathing in what it means to walk a path of the sacred. But as you know, and you know, through all spiritual teachings, it's a constant remembrance of coming back. It's like basic meditation practice. We sit down to connect with breath, and the mind eventually comes in and takes us away, whisks us off to some other platform, like a train and the train conductor, and then we've got to bring it back. It's like a constant kind of dance, a constant weaving between what seems like the mundane or the ordinary back to what reality really is, which is sacred all the time. If only we can retune our perspective to allow our awareness to sit in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems perfectly challenging in a way to feel that sacred connection, like to get lost. We get lost back in the dream state, some might say, and then have a moment of a remembering, or you say a prayer, you do something that helps you find that place of remembering. But if it were so easy to remember all the time, life wouldn't be life, and it wouldn't be this mystical, mysterious dance that we could never ever wrap our rational minds around. And lately I've been practicing just trying to honor the humanness, my humanness, and like honor all my quirks and imperfections and worries and remember that that's all perfect, and that helps me stay connected. So,
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've already touched on so many things that we could continue to talk about, which I would love to, such as yourself deepening your work with ayahuasca and with the plant dietas, with your teachers. And of course, there's other plant medicines that we hold dear to our heart. Of course, Huachuma, San Pedro cactus. And as we mentioned before, how this kind of all finds some sort of intersection with your career as a singer-songwriter. But maybe for a little bit of context for our listeners and viewers, and also for me as well, because I'd love to hear a little bit more about your backstory. So maybe take us back in time a little bit and tell us the story, or rather, tell us the story of how you came to find this path of shamanism, or maybe rather how the path of shamanism, plant-based shamanism found you?
Yeah. Well, um, my story, shit. Um, I recorded my first project, my first sort of album. It was just an acoustic album way back in like 2006. I'd always sort of dabbled in spiritual teachings and meditation, and my mom taught me to meditate when I was a young kid. My mom and both my grandma did meditation courses when they were younger, to get me to just calm down when I was like, I don't know, 5, 6 years old. I was always running around the house breaking things, and
Hyperactive kid.
yeah, my mom said you should learn to meditate, and so so her and my dad, they taught me how to meditate, and I remember I was like, will I be able to levitate if I do this? I remember they both kind of looked at each other. They were like, yeah, yeah. they just lied because they wanted me to just to get out of their hair for a minute. And so I started meditating when I was a little kid, thinking I was going to be able to levitate one day. I think they told me it would take like 6 months to levitate, and which it ended up taking me 5 years. No, I think.
Probably not far from the truth, huh? In one sense of the word, levitation, sure.
Yeah, but I really quick realized there was something there. That there was some sort of a deep, maybe perhaps consciousness, or I don't know what other word to use for it, but I could sense when the thoughts weren't there, there was still something there. Anyway, so I go on with my life. I record an album. I started developing a drinking problem. I had some, I guess, scary and some. I was a blackout drinker. Somebody who would just black out sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
This. I remember sending you voice memos and stuff back in those days, even when I was still trying to figure out a way to not drink. So that led me to AA meetings, and it was a good way to like put my ego in check for sure. It's interesting. There's in those AA rooms, there's some people in there with some years of sobriety that are super wise. Like, and they would speak and you'd be like, holy shit, like you really understand something that I'm trying to understand.
And I remember you telling me that during these AA meetings, the teachings in AA were finding parallels in the teachings that you had come across through drinking ayahuasca as well.
Yes. Yeah, AA is sort of it's a path of service, and a path of sort of learning to calm down the ego. And the first thing you got to do in AA is surrender. Is to what's the right to admit you're powerless over something. And I sort of feel like that's like the first big step in any spiritual in spirituality in general, like is a surrendering of the way you want life to be to what does like God or spirit or consciousness want my life to be. If I live in alignment with truth and honesty and service and all these things, and life might be, you gotta surrender to life might be way different than you wanted it to be, right? But that it's pretty common in all traditions that you might get a life. There's a promise that you will probably receive a life beyond your wildest dreams. So I found that pretty helpful in AA, and yeah, and then I got really, into ayahuasca and going down the jungle and doing these dietas, and I hadn't written a new song in years. I was feeling pretty stuck, and I, it's funny. I before going down and doing my first proper dieta, I thought my life was going pretty well. I was pretty happy. I was jogging right along, and I thought, I don't really want to go down and do this dieta, but I'm going to do it anyway because I agreed to it. And I thought, I'm going to fix my problems while I'm out there. I got some ego to like whatever. I've got problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's got fucking problems, and I'm like, I'm gonna fix these problems. And I'm gonna come back. I'll probably never have to do ayahuasca again. I'll never have to throw up again. I'll never have to drink that nasty medicine. And I went down there, and that was just not the message I got. It was probably my third or fourth ceremony. I drank my cup, and I remember Don Howard saying, I remember somebody asked him, like, why did you choose this path? And he said, I had a vision. And somebody said, what's the difference between just like any old ayahuasca hallucination or thing that you see and a vision? And he said, when you have a vision, you just,
It's a
and
feeling.
yeah, it's, I think he said it's just undeniable. And I had this vision that was undeniable. And essentially my whole life was reviewed. I was sort of going through like an exorcism during the ceremony. I couldn't really control my body or the sounds I was making. I was doing all these weird things, it probably seemed like I was going through a really hard time, and which was challenging. And I found at that time, anytime I entered into the deep into the spirit world, my body shook a lot, and it was uncomfortable. But this spirit came to me, and it seemed to be like one of my spirit guides or something. And he took me to this sacred place, and after my life was reviewed, and I was shown just how like every single thing, even the most little minute thing had led to this moment in my life. And it was like I had a graduation of my old life in this sacred crystal palace, where there were 4 spirits there, and I was dieting 4 different plants. And these spirits made it clear that this was something that is in me, the ayahuasca path. And so I agreed. They asked me, will you do this path? And I said, yes. And I never agreed to anything more in my whole life. I wept and cried and said, yes, 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 I will. So that was my first vision. And so ever since then, I've been, going down this path, and it's a little challenging living here, and not getting to go into the jungle as much as I'd like. But yeah, that's sort of how I ended up on this path. And while I was in the jungle, I wrote a song, and I hadn't written a song in a long time. It's funny, right when I got to the jungle, I just couldn't stop writing, and it was like I had a purpose to write. All of a sudden, I was writing a song for my people in ceremony, like some sort of lessons that I was learning, and I had purpose to write again, and I couldn't stop writing, and it's a song called Fall, which is on my Spotify and stuff.
One of my faves, man. Powerful song.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now still apprenticing, and I was telling you earlier, I just found a spiritual teacher as well. I've been super into the teachings of Adyashanti, and he's kind of from that non-duality school, and he's thought to be, one of the enlightened masters. I know it can be kind of a triggering thing to say for lots of people, but or to hear, whatever. But it seems to me like he speaks a lot of truth, or he embodies some sort of truth. I'm not sure if you can ever really speak in terms of universal truth with words, But anyway, I've been obsessed with spiritual teachings, and somebody who he gave his blessing to go teach is this guy named Mokshananda. So I had my first session with him, and I'm going to go out and have a session with him in Santa Cruz on Wednesday, and I'll be out in Santa Cruz doing ceremonies as well. Yeah, I don't know. It's being in ceremony space feels like home to me. It feels like home. And when I'm singing in ceremony, it feels like home. When I'm helping somebody going through a hard time, it feels like home. It's just sort of indescribable, and I'm sure you can relate.
Yeah. Look, you've got me feeling like real emotional. I can feel that bubbling up from my heart. Like I can even start to feel like a little bit of watering in the eyes when you talk about that sense of home.
Yeah.
And I was talking about that longing, that feeling of longing earlier.
Yeah.
That's a truth for me as well. You're talking about receiving the vision from ayahuasca. I know that too from one of the other plant medicines that we hold so dearly, Huachuma. Very, very, very similar story. And just hearing you speak about ayahuasca in that way and being in ceremony space and connecting with the medicines in that way, that's that hits home in a very tender way for me. Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah. So, I mean, one of the questions that I was going to ask you was how your relationship to ayahuasca has shifted and evolved, but you've kind of alluded to that in some degree. And, I think it's that when we're talking about a relationship, there's something important here to be aware of, and it's that we are entering relationship with a sentient being, an intelligent life force unto its own, with its own, these plants have their own creative capacity and spirit. And when we do engage in relationship, it's not going to be a healthy relationship if we're from the mindset of take, like what can you give me all the time? Yeah. So there's got to be that aini, that sacred reciprocity of giving in return. So maybe there's a question around here. If you've got any reflections around, when you first started connecting with ayahuasca up until now, where you've learned this plant a lot more and this plant has learned you to a greater capacity. And, something that you also didn't touch on, which I'd love to hear, is how did you come across the path of plant-based shamanism? When did you first hear about ayahuasca or Huachuma? What was it that sparked it?
Well, which question do you want me to answer first? That one?
All of them.
Okay. I'm like trying to remember everything. Like, okay. Well, I first heard about Huachuma and ayahuasca from Aubrey Marcus on the Joe Rogan podcast. Right. And he was talking about this white wizard guy, Don Howard. And at that time, I heard it, and I literally just like emailed Don Howard. I found him and booked my first retreat down in the jungle. And I met you the second time I was there.
Yeah. First, because I know that you were just drinking Huachuma first time. Yeah.
Yeah, the first time my first Huachuma ceremony, I still remember when it kicked in. We were on the boat driving to this beach in the middle of the Amazon, And I remember it was like time stopped, and I just started bawling. And he's now a friend of mine too. We don't stay in contact as much as you and I, but he's a DJ, and he was up in the front of the boat, and I was in the back. And I remember I just started bawling, and I look up, and he had just turned around, and he looks me in the eyes, and he's just bawling, and like we just connected. Like, oh, bro, you're feeling what I'm feeling.
Mm.
I spent probably a good 5-6 hours that day just crying tears of gratitude and joy. It was like 10 million pounds have been lifted off my back, and I understood so deeply that um, this is a sacred journey, and that we're all truly connected, and we're all in this thing together, you know. Um, it was the first time I really realized, like, just how silly it really is to get lost in your own drama, you know. So that's how I first heard about plant medicines, was through that podcast, that Aubrey Marcus on the Joe Rogan podcast. And then you asked me some things maybe I've learned from ayahuasca.
Well, it was more about your shifting and evolving relationship with ayahuasca from the start to now, but maybe intertwined with that, you can speak about maybe some of your stories about your developing relationship with the plants outside of ayahuasca, like the companion plants that you sit with dieta as well, and how that's evolved over time.
Yeah, sure. Um, you know, my relationship with ayahuasca really was it was like a relationship with the most loving, incredible mother who knows me better than I know myself, and and she's she wants me to love myself. You know, and she's in her very own creative, beautiful, mystical way going about it. Um, and that's kind of how my relationship started off with ayahuasca, as I think it really does for most people. Um, you know, there were lots of aspects of myself, and I think this is pretty common, that I really didn't want to accept, you know. And um, so that's kind of how my relationship started, and I started opening up and talking, and realizing that there is nothing really wrong with me, you know, and these types of things. And you know, and then it started to shift into, I remember I was doing a ceremony, and at that point, I mean, I had more mystical, ridiculously mind-blowing experiences. And I mean, I could write a whole book about all the, you know, mind blowers. And I remember I had a ceremony, and I had this it was a very clear message. It was like, you're done drinking for a while. You're gonna be a helper, you know. And at that point, I'd never really been a helper. Um, and so after that, I started just being a helper for a long time at ceremonies. And I was even my teacher's assistant for a dieta, where I just pretty much was learning the tradition, and being of service. And I really, at that point in my relationship with the medicine, was getting just as much out of helping people as I was, you know, drinking the medicine. And yeah, so now I'm kind of um, in in this tradition that I've been following. My teacher says that you know, it's anywhere from like 8 to 10 dietas is when you can get your blessing from the teacher. And during those dietas, I mean, you know, I'm I'm still just a student, you know, and I'm still just um, the medicine just continues to go infinitely deeper and deeper and deeper, which still somehow manages to blow my mind every time I drink it. But when I'm not in the jungle, I'm trying to help and go to as many ceremonies and just play music and be of service as much as I can. Um, um, and oh, you asked about the plants. So my first dieta, I dieted bobensana and three other plants that aren't very common. And bobensana is thought to open up your dreams. And in so many spiritual traditions, your dreams are important. Your dreams are um, there to help guide you. And something that the plants told me was that, like, our ancestors can kind of communicate with us through our dreams. And in some deep way, perhaps our ancestors are a big part of us and are inside of us, and want these perhaps wounds to be healed. They want us to be whole. They want us to feel love and connection, and they don't want us to feel shame and disconnection and all these other things that oftentimes come from these wounds that get handed down, generation after generation. Not only just, I think from, orally and physically, from interacting, but also I feel like almost at like a DNA level. And Bobensana really changed my dreams. That dieta, I had the most ridiculously deep, strange dreams within dreams, and like some were scary, and some were great. And I had even like really cool dreams about like jaguars and shamans teaching me in my dreams, and my second dieta, I dieted piri piri, or piri piri, I don't know how you would say it, and lopuna blanca. And so lopuna is a big tree, and it's thought to have like a really masculine spirit, and it teaches you about being present and getting your shit together, I guess you could say. And piri piri is actually quite it's a little psychoactive on its own. And so in my tradition, you're drinking this big tea, like a big tea made of these plants all day long, and you try to finish this big thing of it every day. And piri piri kind of felt like for 10 days I was in like a really vivid dream, and it sort of felt like the ayahuasca. When I drank ayahuasca, it sort of felt like I was on LSD and ayahuasca at the same time. It completely changed ayahuasca for me. It felt like it opened up this other space or door or something. And ever since then, it's not really that uncomfortable to be in the spirit world as it once was. It used to be very, very uncomfortable physically. But after that plant, it like relaxed my whole nervous system in that space, which is cool. I highly recommend dieting piri piri and lopuna. It's not for everybody. Some people had to stop taking it because it was a little too intense. But
and from memory, is piri piri like a long grass that kind of grows along the banks of the waters? Is that the piri piri that I'm thinking of?
I know bobensana grows along the banks of the Amazon. I'm to be honest, I'm not sure. I think piri piri. I remember they said something like, my memory could be.
If it's piri piri that I'm thinking of, and it's been a couple of years since I've communicated or tuned in with this particular plant, I'm pretty sure it's piri piri that I've had through eye drops. Do you know? Yeah, it could be used as a eye medicine also.
I haven't heard that, but wouldn't surprise me.
Well, I mean, there's just so many different ways of working with all of these plants, aren't there? It's
Yes.
like if we're talking about something like tobacco, there's so many ways of communicating with tobacco, whether it's through the smoke or vapor or through the resinous tar or through the powdered snuff, or through drinking tobacco. I've heard of people doing tobacco enemas. I don't know.
That sounds intense.
Yeah, I don't know too much about that, but I certainly have heard that on the grapevine. But
Yeah, I've smoked some cigarettes through my butthole, but never. That sounds so
really?
intense. No.
It wouldn't surprise me from back in the day. I've done some pretty crazy things during my time as well.
It just sounds so intense taking.
And dangerous, potentially very dangerous as well.
Yeah, I mean, I hear it makes you violently ill just to drink it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
but
it's one plant that you should diet though, and in that way, if you want to be an ayahuascero, according to my teacher,
So, do you want to give a shout out to your teacher or your lineage as well? Like, I'm curious to know who you consider your teachers to be. And I mean, when we're talking about teachers, there's of course the plants, and then the human teachers, and then the more than human teachers, whether it's the rivers, the mountains.
Yeah. So my lineage goes back to Don Salon, and Don Salon was one of Don Jose Campos's teachers, and Don Jose Campos has this really cool book he wrote. It's called Ayahuasca and the Shaman, or something like that, I want to say. And it's you really get the essence of him, because the people who wrote the book, they interviewed him and they left it sort of in his broken English, because he doesn't speak perfect English, but you get his essence in that book, and I've met him, and he's amazing. And so when I go down and do the dietas, they're at his sanctuary deep in the middle of the jungle near Pucallpa, and it's called Munai, which means love. And so my teacher, I can't say his name.
For privacy reasons, huh?
Yeah. But I wonder how much I can say without. I'll just speak about him as a person. He's an older man, and he has an amazing wife, and the two of them are they have so much love and compassion for all of the people that they serve this medicine to. And my teacher, he's not an incredible musician. He's not an incredible singer. And there's a lot of ayahuasqueros out there that are, and I'm a musician. I'm drawn to him because, for instance, when we do dietas, we do ceremonies every other night, and then you have the opportunity to drink by yourself just about every morning that we're not drinking that night. And on our off days, he goes to each participant and spends time with everyone, and allows them to talk with him and ask questions. And he doesn't really rest. I mean, he doesn't really get much rest whether he's leading a retreat or a dieta. He's really there for everyone. And there's so much love and compassion. There's so much respect for the tradition in him. I would say in that way, he's brilliant. And he's funny. He cracks a lot. He doesn't take himself serious. He's always cracking, stupid sex jokes or whatever, like sometimes, or whatever, just like, he's
Well, that's one of the hallmarks of some of the greatest spiritual teachers as well.
Yeah,
That lighthearted, ch- childlike silliness.
yeah. Um, so I have a lot of respect for him in that way, and that's, and he's he's very connected to the spirits, I would say, and you can feel it, you know. So that's my main teacher, I've sat with lots of different people, and when I try to learn a song from each person I sit with, or I try to learn as much as I can from people I sit with, because even other participants, because I'm genuinely fascinated, and I would say some of my teachers are also people from other, like, Native American lineages and stuff like that come and sit in ceremony, and they'll sing their songs, and I'll pick their brain after ceremony, and ask them about their tradition, and their songs, and what it all means to them too, and it's kind of beautiful when a ceremony is sort of a melting pot of different traditions and different songs, and um, I love that shit, man. I'm like such a nerd for that stuff, I get all excited.
Well, me too. And I think a lot of people walking this path would feel that as well. For myself, it's because I've been disconnected from lineage and tradition throughout my younger years. So, of course, it's going to be natural to find resonance and interest in the wisdom keepers of many different traditions and those who really walk and protect the sacred ways, and in all the various aspects of what that actually means to people walking these different traditions.
Yeah.
So you've touched on Bobinsana, Piri Piri. What was the other plant medicine that you mentioned?
Lopuna Blanca.
Lopuna Blanco.
Lopuna Blanca. It's interesting. You'd think it would be La Puna Blanca, but they call it Lopuna Blanca.
Right.
And
I know you've connected with many other plants as well. Is there anything else that comes to mind that you think is particularly relevant or that wants to come up and be spoken about?
I don't know. I also dieted a few other plants, and then my most recent diet, I dieted ayahuasca, and so I drank.
I remember you telling me that.
So I just drink ayahuasca every day, a giant dose of ayahuasca every day, for 9 days. So 9 days in a row, and
are we talking only the Banisteriopsis carpi vine? Or are you talking about ayahuasca as a brew with chacruna? Okay.
Yeah, with chacruna, and also charipunga or chalipunga.
Chalipunga, yeah.
I've heard it said a few different ways, but yeah, chalipunga. They put that in the brew as well, so there's a little bit of 5-MeO DMT in the brew too. Yeah, I mean, I'd always had a little bit of fear, every time I drank ayahuasca, that maybe I was gonna go crazy, or maybe it was gonna show me something that I'm not supposed to see, or a part of myself that I don't want to see, or and then dieting ayahuasca, it completely eradicated that fear. I don't have any shred of doubt anymore that when I drink that medicine, I don't doubt that everything I'm seeing is for my own healing my own self-love, and for the greater good of all beings. Um, and yeah, I mean, was your question like, do I have a message, or like, do I have something to say about it to people, or like just
No,
about
I was just
myself?
asking you whether there are any other plants that you wanted to speak on, like
Oh,
just also, honoring and paying our respects towards the plants as their own kind of sentient intelligences, their own spirit beings as well. And I
yes.
know that during conversations, sometimes one particular plant or one particular aspect of a being that we've connected with feels called to come forward and find find expression through our vocal cords out there, through the digital realms out there into the mystery, to share a message,
Yeah.
share some wisdom or some insights about itself or your relationship with it, or you can take it wherever you see fit, man.
Yeah. I mean, I yeah, I can't really think of anything else. My other dieta I did, um, I dieted chuchuwasi, I want to say,
Chuchuwasi, yeah, chuchuwasi, yeah.
and something else. But it was a gentle one because I was the assistant, the helper. But even on that one, I feel like that was actually my most challenging dieta because I had to um, um, deal with some projections of one of the participants.
Mm.
Um,
I think we might have had this conversation.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's one of the challenges um, in being um, a plant medicine man like yourself, or an ayahuasquero, or even like a spiritual teacher is um, are the projections. People
Mm.
might um, see you as something other than just a guy, you know, than just a fucking dude, just yeah. Um, um, and that can get a little weird and I guess challenging to navigate. Um, this particular guy thought I had the hots for his girlfriend or or something was one of the projections, and which I didn't at all, um, and that was a little I mean, it was people can get pretty far out there on the medicine. People can have
Mhm,
some get a little delusional, and
mhm.
um,
Well, yeah, you're pointing out that there's an importance in knowing oneself to a great degree. And when we come to a greater awareness of that, we can discern or distinguish what energies are our own and what energies are coming from somewhere else. And we can better hold our center and stay grounded despite whatever energies are coming from us or whatever projections are coming from us, whether that's being deeply entwined and enmeshed in the great void of the spirit world, or whether it's coming from other participants.
yeah,
It's, yeah, we're touching on an importance of doing deep self work here.
yeah, yeah, and I think that's why I think it's one of the reasons why in my in this lineage he doesn't usually give his blessing for like 8 to 10 dietas, is because it you know I mean, because it's a lot to. I mean, you really have to know yourself to do this work without um, finding yourself perhaps in some really sticky situations, or challenging. I mean, regardless, you're going to find yourself in challenging situations, but I get why he wants you to really have done a lot of work with this medicine,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
it's some ayahuascas would say, or shamans in general, it's the hardest job in the world. Yeah, maybe the best job in the world, but some would say it's pretty challenging.
Mm. Yeah, and it makes me reflect on one of these pillars of all shamanic traditions all around the globe, and that's becoming an empty chalice or a clear vessel or the hollow bone, for spirit to come through clearly. And yeah, I had another thought that was going to trail on the back of that, but it's drifted off into the mystery.
No, that's great, man. Anytime I ever do anything awesome in ceremony, it's literally me getting the fuck out of the way. Like I'm just allowing, whether it's I'm singing a song or if I'm a helper and I'm helping somebody. There's the more empty I can be, the better everything is. And yeah, you can't even take credit for it. It's like, I get why some of the best Ayahuasceros are just like, I had nothing to do with it, or even the best musicians, after their performance, like, sure, I'll take credit, but I just got out of the way,
Yeah. Yep. Yes, there is a knowing, an understanding there that there's a certain state of being that we can attune ourselves to where we become the vessel for the creative essence of the great spirit, the great dream, the great mystery to flow through us. We are just allowing that to pour out through the creative capacities that we've developed in oneself or that we just open ourselves to.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, one of the ways that you do this is through your music. So you touched on it a little bit before. So maybe a more formal kind of question is how does this path of plant-based shamanism, engaging with ayahuasca and all of these various herbs and trees over there in the jungle, how does this inform how it is that you're showing up with your singing and your songwriting and how you're navigating the music industry?
Well, that's a good question. Well, a few of the songs that I released, The Fall and that song Kelsey Ann, I wrote in the jungle, and so it's obviously impacting my music in a big way. Honestly, it just opened up, for me, it just helped open up my creativity again. These next few singles that I'm releasing really have nothing to do with plant medicine. In fact, a lot of the songs I'm releasing I went through a really difficult breakup. So I wrote about that, and those songs are, just writing more medicine for me, perhaps maybe medicine for others too. I feel like, all music is medicine in one way or another if it touches you, even if it's a sad song. Obviously in ceremony I don't sing breakup songs or anything like that. But
there's an energy that breakup song carries, though. Yeah, there's something that kind of underpins the words that you're singing about. It's an energy, yeah.
Yeah.
And that can come through ikaras, or that can come through medicine music. It's these songs or these sounds of sadness or grief that touch us in a deep place. It's like a universal thing that we feel when we do go through a breakup.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Working with the plant medicines has given me more compassion, for sure, and I think that comes out in my singing, in my playing.
Have you noticed that your voice has changed?
Yeah, especially in ceremony. There's something so magical about singing when you're super high on the medicine. The first time I sang that song "Fall" was in the jungle at the it was the last ceremony of the dieta, and that ceremony was done during the day, and I was just like the high guy in the room. You know, I was moving around, and like I was so infinitely deep in the moment and in the medicine that I mean, I you know, states of consciousness beyond words. And my teacher walks over and he calls on me. He goes, "Jonathan, can you sing?" and I looked at him and I was like, I remember I just said, "What?" And because it was like 10,000 miles away. And he goes, "Can you sing?" And I said, "Yeah." And everyone in the room was, I couldn't believe it, because you know, I have to plug my computer in 1 second. I don't want this to die.
Yeah, sure.
I thought I plugged it in already, but 1 second.
For the listeners and viewers, I'd almost be a little bit remiss, wouldn't I, if I didn't ask John to exercise his vocal capacity while we were on the show together. And perhaps I'll add a little bit of a snippet with his permission into the intro of this episode, or maybe during the outro. But when he comes back from tuning in his digital devices, maybe we'll invite him to share a little Icaro or maybe a snippet of Fall. Hey, brother.
Hey. Sorry about that. So
bringing it back, you were talking about singing, and I was just mentioning to the listeners and the viewers, just to keep the podcast rolling, that maybe I'd be a little bit remiss if I didn't invite you to exercise your vocal capacity at some stage as well.
Sure.
But
yeah.
Anyways, continuing on with the story in the Maloka or the hut.
Yeah, and
deep in the medicine.
Yeah, so he calls on me, and I said yeah, and so I get up, and I grabbed my guitar, and it's actually this one right here. And I looked at it, and I remember it was like it was like it had a spirit, and it was like a living thing. And I've had this guitar for over 20 years, and it had been with me to every gig I'd ever done. And I remember I was overwhelmed with gratitude for my guitar. I wept. I started just bawling my eyes out and hugging my guitar and kissing my guitar. And people are like, "This guy's got to sing right now." Like, look at it. I'm just a blubbering mess over my guitar. And then I finally pulled my shit together. I opened up my my notebook, and I wrote the song on it. And I sang the song, and singing on that medicine, it's almost like you can hear. It's gonna sound crazy. It's almost like you can hear the spirits singing along with you through your voice sometimes. It's almost like there's certain resonances that you can't normally hear coming out of your voice that are coming out, and you don't really know where they're coming from, but it's fucking awesome. You know, it's like and so I sang that song the first time. That was the first time I ever sang that song, and that's about it for that story. I just remember everybody after that ceremony was like, "Dude, I can't believe he called on you." Like,
I'm laughing so much as well because I know that in my own experience, being so deep in the medicine, and the Ayahuascero coming up to me and being like, "Can you sing? Can you sing a song?" I'm like, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Because you're just so deep in it, and you're not expecting to be in that role of giving in that way. It's
Yeah.
like kind of pulling yourself together and pulling it all back and just trusting in spirit to flow through you. Like you say, I mean, that doesn't sound crazy at all to me. It might sound crazy to other people, but that's certainly my experience as well, that
Yeah.
deep on the medicine, there are different vibrations or frequencies that come out. It's like the vocal cords take on a new life. And I don't know how else to explain it except that spirit is coming through in a very, very powerful way.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. That's it's great talking to someone like yourself who can relate. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good to see you, man.
It's good to see you too, man.
Yeah.
Well, look, maybe we can start to wrap things up for the podcast then.
Did you want me to sing a song? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to say is maybe you can direct people to connect with you. I mean, all your music's on Spotify is it under Jonathan Blake Salazar?
Yes. Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Do you hear echo all of a sudden?
No, I didn't.
Oh.
And you've got Instagram. I don't know if you want to direct people to your Instagram or social media accounts to come and connect with you there.
Yeah. So, everywhere you can find me, Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music, all that is Jonathan Blake Salazar. And that's a lot to spell and remember. I understand.
Yeah, I'll have all the links in the show notes to this episode so people can jump straight there and go to Spotify or Apple iTunes, or I'll grab all the links off you when we're done, and we'll chuck it in there.
Yeah.
And also, what I wanted to ask you while we're on as well,
Instagram, JB Salazar Music. That's different than just Jonathan Blake Salazar. JB Salazar Music. And then, yeah. So Facebook, Jonathan Blake Salazar. There you go. That's all. Sorry.
And what's going on? What's going on with projects with you? I mean, I know you're stepping deeper into this path of shamanism and apprenticeship to ayahuasca. But what's going on with the music writing? Are you seeing yourself kind of transitioning away from the singer-songwriting and deepening into the world of plant-based shamanism? What's the go?
No, yeah, I definitely am moving towards, facilitating ayahuasca ceremonies one day. But I'm still writing, and still recording. I just recorded a new song a couple months ago with my producer. His name's Jesse Barrera. He's a really amazing producer, and so I'm going to keep writing, and I'm sure as I continue on this path that I'm on, that I'll write more songs like Fall, and songs that will be really good for ceremony, and I'll probably continue to write songs about just where I'm at in life in general too, because I love singer-songwriter type songs. I love listening to Ray LaMontagne and shit. I mean, there's a million singer-songwriters, but you take like Ray LaMontagne, for instance. There's well, there goes my light. Oh well. He writes about everything, love and lost love and trials and tribulations, and all that stuff really resonates with me too, not just the medicine songs. I love music, period. I love it all. So I'm going to keep writing just whatever the fuck I feel like writing. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to try and force something, it just doesn't work for me. It doesn't come out right. I've tried. Yeah. So I'm going to keep writing. I'll keep recording. And I've got 3 new singles coming out in the next few months. So if you follow me on Spotify or Apple Music or whatever, you'll get notified of those songs. And they're 2 breakup songs about a hard breakup that I went through, and then a love song about moving into a new place with my girlfriend. And yeah, I'm excited to. I'm excited. I've grown I've grown to appreciate the fact that anybody's listening at all. It's a beautiful thing knowing that, whether it's 10 people or like 10,000 people every day listening while they're driving in their car, if it's just one person, I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Awesome, brother. Well, look, this has been fun. What do you want to do? You want to play us a song to see us out of the podcast?
Sure.
Or sing us a song? Up to you. Yeah.
Oh, do you want me to just play?
I want you to do, just as you said, whatever the F you feel like doing.
I'm just going to have this mic like set up over here, I suppose. Check. Let me...
We've had a couple of guests share
Check.
Poems, prayers, incantations, songs, just singing before, but never guitar. So this is the first for the show, brother.
Nice. Hopefully this sounds okay. Check.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
Take it away whenever you're ready.
Check. Okay, let's try. So this is that song I wrote in the jungle. Play in the mud, kiss the earth, feel the touch of the sun as it dances around on your skin. Lay in fields of flowers, catch your breath, and take naps under trees. Time wonders where you have been. Howl at the moon and cry deeply for those you have lost on the way. Hold hands and make love, and don't let the tide of the ocean come take her away. And let yourself fall in love. Let yourself fall in love. Surrender. Let yourself fall in love. Ooh. Love will guide you home. Though you'll fall a million times, always remember to keep holding on to your faith. 'Cause one day you'll arrive at a palace, and inside those walls, all is pure. Yeah. So let yourself fall in love. Let yourself fall in love. Surrender. Let yourself fall in love. Ooh. Love will guide you home. Don't give up on me. Don't give up on me. Don't give up, you'll find your way back home. Don't give up on me. Don't give up on me. Don't give up. You're coming home. So let yourself fall in love. Let yourself fall in love. Surrender. Let yourself fall in love. Ooh, yeah. Love will guide you home. So let yourself fall in love. Let yourself fall in love. Surrender. Let yourself fall in love. Ooh, love will guide you home. Oh, you'll fall. Your faith. I think I cut out that for a second, but
Did cut out there for a second, but boom, what an amazing song, brother.
oh,
Yeah,
thank you.
that was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, hon. I'm trying to find you again real quick so I can see your face. There you are. Okay.
Yeah.
It sounded
Awesome.
okay. It wasn't like clipping or anything.
Sounded perfect. Exactly as it was meant to sound.
Okay.
Yeah. I love you, brother.
I love you too, man. So good to see you. I'm proud of
Yeah.
you for walking the path that you're walking. It's inspiring to see.
Yeah. Back at you, man. All right. Boom. Let's leave it at that for the podcast. To everyone listening and viewing, thank you for tuning in to Birdsong. We love you. Peace out, everyone.
Ciao.